Good morning, Los Angeles, and welcome to the LA City Council meeting for Tuesday, July 19th, 2011, here in the John Ferraro Council Chambers, room 340 of City Hall, where we meet every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. I want to welcome those members of the public who are here with us, our viewers on Channel 35, through the internet at lacity.org, and any of our listeners through Council Phone, which is a service to listen into Council at 213-621-CITY. As well as any of our attendees that are in our remote locations of San Pedro and Van Nuys City Hall. Those are 6 different ways you can watch City Council in action and participate in our proceedings as well. Our agendas are available in the back, online, and in city buildings. Those are made available 72 hours in advance of our meetings, 24 hours in advance for our special meeting items. And if you'd like to be heard on any of the items that are before us today, if they've not yet had a public hearing in committee, your card, which you can hand to a sergeant at arms, will automatically trigger a hearing, and items that have already had one will require council members to reopen public hearings. There's also general public comment each meeting, which is for items not on today's agenda, but nevertheless under our jurisdiction. And you can fill out a speaker card and just put general public comment in the upper right corner, and we'll be sure to hear your comments. We've got a clock there at the podium and in our remote locations. It's usually 2 minutes per speaker, and it'll help you guide your time. We have to keep that even to make sure it's fair to everybody who comes and speaks before us. But we appreciate your presence here and your involvement in today's meeting. We do have almost a quorum, which is 10 members or 2/3 of our now 14-member body, though we are a 15-member body. Janice Hahn is being sworn in today as a congresswoman in Washington, D.C. On C-SPAN, I believe, as we speak, if you want to switch the channel. Not that I'd ever tell you to not watch Channel 35, but if you had a second choice, you could check it out over on C-SPAN, I think. And that means we only have 14 members, and we are awaiting the following. Mr. Cardenas and Mr. Zine are both excused today, so Ms. Hahn, Mr. Koretz, and Mr. Reyes will constitute a quorum as soon as one of them gets here. If they will please make their way there, now about 13 minutes late, and out of respect for the public, we will begin the meeting as soon as they are here. Thank you for your patience while we wait those 3 members. Again, calling council members, sorry, I said Hahn, just Koretz and Reyes. Koretz and Reyes, please join us as soon as possible. Thank you. We do have 10 members. I'm sorry. It was Mr. Krikourian. Please call the roll. We have 10 members. Thank you, Mr. Krikourian.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Englander, Weezer, Koretz, Krikourian, Labange, Parks, Pereira, Reyes, Rosendahl, Weston, Zine, Garcetti. 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
First order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Krikourian moves. Mr. Weezer seconds. Without objection, those minutes are approved. Next order of business.
Committed resolutions for approval.
Mr. Alarcon moves and Mr. Rosendahl seconds. Without objection, those will be approved as well. Since this is Tuesday, if I can ask everybody, Mr. Cardenas, welcome. You're excused today, but it's always good to have an extra member. Let's go ahead and please rise, if we may, for our salute to the flag. And if I can ask you, Mr. Reyes, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Council President. It'll be my honor. Everybody please stand. Right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reyes. Thank you, everybody. If we can run through the agenda. Any items that folks would like to call special from the council, I would now direct your attention to this. First items, please.
Items 1 through 3 are Department of Building and Safety lane zones for public hearing. The department requests to continue items 1 through 3 for 1 week to July 26.
Okay. If there's no objection, we'll continue those until the 26th, items 1 through 3. Next items, please.
Items 4 through 19 are items for which public hearings have been held.
Okay. Anybody wishing to call any of the items 4 through 19 special? I'll call 17 special. Mr. Weezer?
Number 6.
Number 6 for Mr. Weezer. Mr. Parks?
approve both reports on number 5.
And number 5, we'll move both reports.
I'd like to hold 18 and 19 so I can speak with Mr. Englander before we approve them.
Mr. Englander, did you want 18 and 19? Yeah. We'll call those special for you via Mr. Parks. It's okay. You're allowed to speak for yourself after the 4th week here, so that's good. Next week, I know. Next week you'll be able to call things special yourself. Any other specials? If not, let's go ahead with the remaining items. Please open the roll on the balance, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That's approved.
Number 4.
Number 4 will send forthwith. Next items, please.
Items 20 through 33 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration. For item number 24, the CAO completed its bond sale on the competitive basis with 9 bidders and awarded City of Los Angeles General Obligation Bond Series 2011-A in the aggregate principal amount of $117 million to J.P. Morgan Securities, LLC, the lowest responsible bidder at the true interest cost of 3.505203%, and rejected all other bids.
Okay. Mr. Koretz.
I'd like to call 21 and 22 special.
Okay, Mr. Koretz calls 21 and 22. 32 is called special by Mr. Parks. And do we have cards on any of these items?
No.
Okay, we'll close the public hearings on those items. If there are no other specials, let's go ahead and take up the balance. Please open the roll. Oh. Okay, let's hold 27 on the desk for Mr. Rosendahl. There's an amending motion. With the balance, then, please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, supplemental council agenda.
On the continuation agenda, on the supplemental agenda, item 34 is an item for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Is there any objection to consideration? Seeing none, 34 is before us. Do we have any cards on this?
No.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Anybody wishing to call 34 special? If not, let's go ahead and Mr. Koretz.
Yeah, I'd like to call that one special.
All right, Mr. Koretz calls 34 special. All right, that will take us to general public comment, which is for items not on today's agenda, but nevertheless under our jurisdiction. We'll have 2 minutes per speaker, and we have speakers both here and in our Van Nuys City Hall chambers. Victor Sitchin is our first speaker. If you'd like to come forward, sir, and then we'll hear from Ankur Patel in Van Nuys. Very good morning.
Good morning.
Would you just lift up the microphone a little bit so we can hear you? Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I'm here to pose some questions and problems with the proposed stadium project and to make a counter-proposal. To start with, in the LA Times June 16th editorial in favor of the project, quote, "Then there is the tax revenue this project is expected to generate. If the stadium is built according to one consulting firm hired by AEG, it would spur the development of 3,064 new hotel rooms and nearly double the tax revenue currently generated. Since AEG was given a 25-year waiver on room tax for the convention center hotels, and then other hotels ask for in-kind consideration, if we double zero, we get zero. Case in point, last week saw the largest convention in LA history. The 1,000-plus rooms at LA Live were sold out, and the city got zero. Actually, less than zero, since meeting rooms at the hotels were used for some events instead of space at the convention center. Number 2, NFL mandates corporate/luxury boxes at new or refurbished stadiums. This is the largest single source of income for stadium owners and the NFL. How is this to be dealt with? Since they are exempt by mandate of the NFL from local taxation. So how is this to be dealt with? Number 3, the ad hoc committee meetings, April 18th and June 30th, community impact statement, none submitted. Why? How is it that Tim Lewicki visits Mar Vista, the Crenshaw District in San Fernando Valley, but not Pico Union, the one area we're most impacted by the proposed project? My counter-proposal is the following. If we bend to fabricated promises from AEG, instead of bending to fabricated promises, we fulfill our promise to our children of a decent education. And that will bring considerable revenue to our city and in terms of its social makeup and financial well-being.
Thank you very much. And just as a technical note, the community impact reports are reports that are submitted by any of our neighborhood councils, and they still can between now and any point that we're going to consider this, both in the ad hoc and on the 29th when we have a full day here on the council for the public on this item. So any neighborhood councils that you know or that anybody listening to this knows can submit community impact reports. Unfortunately now, because we can't have a dialogue, but I'm happy to talk to you privately as well. Yeah, Mr. Reyes, I know, who represents the area around.
Thank you, Council President. Pico Union was referenced in the presentation. I just wanted to share also we'll have a planning focused meeting with the ad hoc to address those concerns. I just want to make sure that we are being very thorough and we're not letting anything slip through the cracks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reyes. Our next speaker is Ankur Patel, who is in Van Nuys. He'll be followed by Justin Marks, also in Van Nuys. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. This is the first time I've been here since Councilmember Englander has joined the board. Welcome, Councilmember Englander. Hopefully I can be less of a gadfly and more of an asset. But I generally come up here and talk about documents, right? Specific documents that the city has, like the city treasurer's investment and cash management report, right? This is a $6 billion document that shows how we invest hundreds of millions of dollars into Nike and Coca-Cola and all these different corporate bonds. We just passed an item right here. I tried to get in a public comment on item number 24, which approved a $600 million bond, right? We continue to issue bonds here and there. But to take a step back and say, how much money is in the general fund today? Can I ask that question and can you give me an answer? How much money is in the general fund? CAO, Council President Garcetti, City Clerk, City Controller, anybody over there? Hello?
Mr. Patel, we're here to listen to you, as you know, during general public comment, because under the Brown Act.
That was a little bit of a theater, I agree. But,
Good job.
Thank you. But how much money is in the general fund right now? Does anybody know? Can anybody tell me? You know, I had to go to the city controller's office. You know me. I go and I file California Public Records Act requests. I filed several of these, asking simple questions like how much money is in the general fund? How much money is in this fund or that fund? By the way, the city has more than 206 pages of funds. Pages of funds, each one line. And as obscure as you can imagine. I don't even want to recite some of these different funds that the city keeps our money in. But the fact of the matter is, we don't know how much money is in the general fund. Forget about these abstract, they're not abstract. They kind of are. But we don't even know how much money is in the general fund. You have to file a California Public Records Act request, and then you get empty envelopes. You get summary of trial balances. The point I'm trying to make here is, I want more information.
Mr. Patel, if I can commend you to the Controller's Office, they are the ones that have a day-to-day look at what is in not only the general fund, but all of our funds, and that is publicly available. Justin Marks is our next speaker, also in Van Nuys, then Donna Perriman will follow. Good morning. Mr. Marks. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, and thank you. With these 2 minutes, I kind of wanted to just comment, basically, what appears to be like a hollow democracy. I made a comment to Ankur Patel earlier about even how I came to this meeting as a personal invitation, be it I believe that that these seats behind us should be filled, and I think that's a large responsibility on people like Ankur Patel and this lady sitting behind. What's your name? I'm sorry? Donna Perriman. And Donna, the beautiful Donna Perriman. But also at the same time, what more can we do to bring out a larger number of the general public to be involved, to have an educated and an involved democracy that's interested in its own well-being? Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and your timing is good. Actually, tomorrow there's a Government 101, which is a course that we offer to the general public. It explains how City Hall works. They'll be visiting City Council meeting tomorrow, but it kicks off in the morning. If you'd like more information, you can go to, I believe we have a link on my website at cd13.com, and it explains the basics, encourages people how to get involved, how to testify, and how to help move legislation and other things tomorrow. Government 101 here at City Hall. Donna Perriman and Van Nuys is our next speaker.
Yeah, congratulations, says Janice Hahn. We will miss her. Miriam couldn't come. She's working hard trying to get the sanitation on board. Anyway, our city council is putting together a new agency, just like our CRA. A new redevelopment agency will take care of where the other left off. No loose strings. CRA has not gone. Long live the agency. They only bankrupt the city. Now you add all these money on these projects here. And because of the redevelopment, they have no money, so the city employees, 20,000 employees, had to concede 4% retiree health care subsidies. They had to make it so they couldn't be a simple contract with only 4%, which they all would have accepted. You couldn't take it from the taxpayer because they closed the loophole. Always the city employees has to come to the rescue. While the City Council misspends for pets projects and redevelopment, Grand Avenue project goes on. With the taxpayers, they have to go for a ballot, and city employees, they don't have to. Taxpayers voted for these councilmen, and for these taxpayers who love the CRA projects, who profit by it. Why couldn't they pay for it? Why did the city employees who didn't benefit by the CRA have to be on their backs? City employees shouldn't be responsible for the city debt caused by the city council. I believe that this is a problem caused the whole city benefits by these projects. Then we should be going and everybody should be sacrificing, and the whole city has to pay for the city debt. You can't just go for a certain amount of people that's all on their back, just like the federal government is going to do with the debt ceiling going on the federal cities' backs and making the federal employees pay it all. So this is not right. Everybody has to pay. That's the way it has to be, especially, and get rid of the new agency.
Thank you, Donna. Our next speaker is Dr. Clyde Williams here in Council Chambers, and then after that is Armando Herman. Good morning.
Good morning. Dr. Clyde Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council board member and also a member of Friends for Southwest Museum Coalition. We're going to hold a special soda pop tasting expedition on Sunday afternoon at York and 57th. We'd invite everybody to attend. It's a fundraiser for this little black object down here, which some people call the Southwest Museum. The Southwest Museum was the first museum in the city of Los Angeles, and thereby represents more than just a building, more than just a black blob. For a lot of people, it was the one thing that unified Northeast LA. It still is, because most of the Northeast LA neighborhood councils support the reopening of the Southwest Museum as a museum, not as a shell, not as a cultural center, not as a senior citizen center, but as a real museum. Why? Because it goes back to a basic concept, pride of place. What can we take pride of in Northeast LA? We don't have a stadium, we don't have this, we don't have that, but we do have the Southwest Museum. We have the hills, we have Mount Washington, but the real symbol for a lot of Northeast LA even has an MTA station named after it, Southwest Museum Station. So even the MTA recognized the importance of this historic landmark for all of Northeast LA, and we would dearly invite you to come to our soda pop tasting expedition on Sunday at 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Mr. Armando Herman. Good morning.
Good morning, council members. Good morning, Councilman Jose Huizar. We are aware that CRA projects are to repair and restore public infrastructures and civic facilities and to encourage economic development, facilities of housing. But the problem, as we heard this morning, is waste, waste, and more waste. Projects that have taken place with funding back in 2007 of $75 million for investors and borrowers to expand and develop a new economic growth for us has not occurred. And that's the reason why unemployment is so high, Mr. Huizar. We're looking forward to seeing the growth of Cesar Chavez Corridor. We're looking forward to looking for the First Street Corridor. But when city council members like Jesse Leon do not get involved in our community, where there is no longer, as brought out by Mr. Rios from CRA, there is no longer a quorum. Where's the input of community? Where's the impact of community to be involved, get a job, get affordable housing? There's no such reality. How long will this continue? I ask that there be an investigation in CRA on the east side Adelante. They've closed their store or office on First Street due to plumbing. I wish to find out, as mentioned, how much administration waste and cost has been implemented simply on administration. That money should be used again for the infrastructure, not just on streets, but also in the areas that are impacted by low income and more so by CD14. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That will close our general public comment for today. We'll go to items called special. First, we're going to take up 32 in just a moment for Mr. Parks out of order, but number 27 was just awaiting an amendment that has now been circulated. So if we can take up 27 without objection as amended, let's go ahead and prepare the roll on 27 and tabulate the vote. If we can tabulate the vote, please.
13 ayes.
Okay, that is approved. Mr. Parks, item 32 we'll take out of order now for you. I know the family is here, and LAPD as well.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask Detective Durazo and Detective Ross and the Garcia Gonzalez family to come up at this time. Colleagues, we have a $50,000 reward on an incident that occurred in the 8th District. We'd ask Detective Durazo to give us the circumstances. And we have with us today Maria Garcia, the mother, Jenny Garcia's sister, Jose Garcia, the cousin, and also Natalie Gonzalez, who's a cousin, and Jenny will speak after the detective. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Detective Durazo, and I'd first like to thank Councilman Bernard Parks, along with other council members, for giving us the opportunity to come forward and speak with you today. Back in August 10th of 2009, Cesar Garcia, a 20-year-old male Hispanic, was riding his bike in the 600 block of West 81st Street. He was approached by a male Hispanic suspect on foot. The suspect approached him, removed a handgun, and fired at Cesar Garcia multiple times. He succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced at scene.
And could you give the information of how the community could contact you as a number and who they should respond to if they have information?
Absolutely. What we're requesting is the $50,000 reward to hopefully motivate witnesses in the community to come forward and share information that they saw. They can contact myself, Detective Durazo, at Criminal Gang Homicide Division 213-485-1383, or my partner, Detective David Ross.
Okay. And then we're going to have the family speak at this time.
Hello. I would just like for you guys to help us out with the $50,000 to catch this person, because I don't think it's fair for him to be outside, killing other people. So if you guys could help us out, it would be really nice.
So we'd like to ask the public for whatever assistance, and let me ask the detective if you could give that number one more time of how to reach you.
It's Criminal Gang Homicide Division of the Los Angeles Police Department, and the telephone number is 213-485-1383.
Colleagues would ask for an aye vote on this $50,000 reward.
Thank you, Mr. Parks, and we're so sorry for your loss, and thank you for being here and sharing that with us. We'll take a vote on this immediately and get it to the mayor. Let's go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
We'll send that to the mayor for a signature today, and we'll get that out on the street. Thank you very much. That is approved. If we can go ahead, and I believe we're still holding number 6 on the table. So let's go ahead and take up items 18 and 19 next. Called special for Mr. Englander by Mr. Parks.
Can we go ahead and table those for tomorrow?
You want to what?
Table those for tomorrow.
Both of them? Okay.
Yes, please.
We can continue both of those without objection. 18 and 19 one day. That will take us to July 20th, tomorrow on Wednesday. All right. Mr. Koretz, items 21 and 22, did you want to take those together?
Yes, actually, it's just a minor change. Both those items are moving, but the deadline of August 3rd for the hearing, I think, is too tight, so we just wanted to change both those dates to August 10th and move the item.
Okay. Without objection, we'll amend those to both on item 22 and 21 for the appeals to the 10th. That's one extra week. Please open the roll as amended, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
All right. 10 will send forthwith. And if I could... Tom, if I can ask you to take the chair for a second, and we'll take up item number 17, which I've called special. Mike's online.
Madam Clerk, would you please call item 17 and forward and recognize Mr. Garcetti?
Thank you very much. I know Mr. Labange and I, as well as Mr. Reyes and Mr. Huizar, all share different parts of the Northeast Division of the Los Angeles Police Department. The division itself is housed in Council District 13, and we're very proud of the work of the Northeast Division. Many of us have seen some of the worst moments in our area. I live in the Northeast Division myself, as does Mr. Labange, and I think Mr. Reyes as well. We've seen the worst moments when we've seen gangs wreak havoc, when we've seen unsafe moments, and in particular, we saw in Northeast Los Angeles when the Drew Street clique of the Avenues gang held that area hostage. We've had a real turnaround story because of the hard work of the Los Angeles Police Department Northeast Division that I shared with you a few weeks ago when we recently took that main gang headquarters drug house, knocked it down, and have turned it into a community garden. We've seen crime rates as low as they've been since the Eisenhower administration, and in Northeast in particular we've seen some of the biggest drops in crime, particularly in the homicides as well as violent crime. Despite the conventional wisdom that when the economy goes down, crime goes up, crime continues to drop here in Los Angeles, and there's no greater demonstration of that we're on the right track than in Northeast Los Angeles. I think the people of Los Angeles have always supported our police department, and that's the reason that they voted to pass years ago Proposition Q, a $600 million bond to renovate and replace antiquated and dilapidated police stations like Northeast Police Station. Northeast Police Station is really an outdated, it was supposed to be temporary station. There's been potential health issues. It was a former processing lab with chemicals for photography, and it is time for us to do well for our police officers as well as for the residents of Northeast, and to look at replacing Northeast Station. In doing that, we are looking today at a bond that came in under budget, in many cases under time, which has meant that despite what people often say about government, not only have these construction projects been well managed, the money that we saved, combined with some other funds that LAPD has, will allow us to renovate and to actually rebuild Northeast Station. So is there staff here on this just that could maybe briefly...
Mr. Brennan's here and the CAO's here.
Come on forward and give us a little idea of what the plans would be for our beloved Northeast Station that we all know and love, but it's time to make sure that LAPD's philosophies today are incorporated physically into the new plant. Again, at no new cost really to the taxpayer, existing funds, but serving over 250,000 Angelinos in 29 square miles. So,
good morning. I'm Ramon Soto with the City Administrative Officer. Before you was a request for authority to build a new Northeast Station on the site of the existing station. The funding would be $29.45 million, of which $28.5 million would be from Prop Q savings, as well as $1 million from the police department. As you've also indicated, Councilmember, this is a facility that the police department has been occupying since the early 1980s. It's a former film processing site. It was not built as a police station, and as a result, it's very difficult for the police department to operate there as a police station. The plan that the police department would have is to build a 45,000 square foot facility, which we modeled after the current Olympic station, which we built under Prop Q.
Same architecture?
Yes.
Okay. It's nice architecture, don't get me wrong. It's a lovely station.
And so, as I indicated, it would be built on the western side of the property. The existing building where the police department has operations right now would remain in place until such time as it's demolished. I will need to point out that what's being replaced here is the administration building. Typically, when we're building a new police facility, it also includes a motor transport facility, as well as a parking structure. At this point in time, since the funds are limited, the police department indicates that they will accept replacing only the administration building, and when funding is available, then they would pursue the construction of a parking structure and vehicle maintenance.
Okay, great. So, colleagues, I think this will be a good thing. Would you like to add anything from the PD?
Only that Northeast, Tom Brennan, Facilities Management for the APD, Northeast has been our #1 priority after the buildings that we were built and remodeled under Prop Q for a number of years. So the ability to move forward with this under the Prop Q is a great thing for our officers who are there. The building is simply not adequate.
Yeah. Anybody who's been in there knows that. Thank you for listening to the officers, listening to us, listening to the community, and really prioritizing that. I think this is a good day, and I ask for your support today. Thank you for your good work on this, and ask you to move forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garcetti, and your leadership. Mr. Reyes.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President. I want to thank Councilman Garcetti. This station is in his district. It serves 3 or 4 districts, I believe. In committee, we had discussions as to the priority to a healthy environment, and that the sites that are being considered and the way the plot plan looks, that the new building will be sitting on a site that, as if I heard you correctly, was the least contaminated. It's a site that has been analyzed through different tests as to the levels of remediation, so we can make sure we have a clean site, a healthy site, and be opportunistic with what that location has to offer. Would I be accurate in saying that?
Yes, Council Member, you would. And I would just like to say that the Bureau of Engineering is responsible for making sure that all the construction is built appropriately. And so among the protocols that they use, they do a full environmental assessment as to conditions at the site, and if anything is found, then appropriate actions are taken to remediate.
And just in closing, I know that Councilman Garcetti was trying his best to find alternate sites. There was a couple of choice ones that we had wishes granted. We're probably more strategic, but we're going to make the best of what we have today and look forward to a very modern. My understanding they'll be mimicking the Olympic Station.
That's correct.
And the Olympic Station, having been there, it's a beautiful facility, has a lot of natural light. It has some very strong components that will facilitate the quality of life for our officers, in as much as we deal with all the other entities that are engaging these stations. So with that, I want to say thank you so much, and look forward to seeing the new station. When is groundbreaking?
The design would start upon approval of the council. So it will take about a year, so construction would actually start about a year from now, next summer.
Wishfully thinking.
It'll happen.
Thank you.
Se puede?
Se puede.
Mr. Huizar.
Thank you, Mr. President. And certainly as one of the 4 council members whose district this will serve, I often hear about the need for the new station, and this is a long time coming. In fact, it's one of the first things I heard from Mr. Labange when I got elected about 6 years ago about working on this. And thank you, Mr. Garcetti, for leading the effort. My question is on the garage. Is it lack of funding or lack of space why the garage is not being provided?
It's lack of funding. The site has adequate space for both parking and motor transport, but at this point, we're limited by the amount of GO bonds available under the Prop Q program. And we're in phase 2 as we speak, and so we were able to scrub out our funds and accounts and enough to do the administration building. If we wanted to add a parking structure and vehicle maintenance, it would increase the costs from the existing $29.5 million to about $49 to $50 million. So it's a substantial difference.
Substantial. And so what will be the parking accommodations, given that we don't have the funding for the additional parking garage?
The police department indicates that it would make do with the existing parking at this point. So
and it's one open, one level, surface level parking lot, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's, in terms of capacity, it's sufficient. It's just, I mean, I often hear that parking is an issue there. So is that accurate or not? Should we be looking, even if we can't do the full garage, maybe do some additional parking accommodations to help alleviate the parking crunch there for our black and whites?
The parking is definitely an issue on the site, and until we can get to the point where we would build a new parking structure, it is our intent to use the site where the old building is. We would basically pave that over and increase the surface parking until such time as we could finish the complete site.
Got it.
And then actually turn the area where the existing building is into basically the plaza in front of the building, as well as visitor parking.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weezer. Mr. Labange.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garcetti, and all of us here. And I think we give a lot of credit to Councilmember Parks, who was then Chief of Police Parks, who was chief when this proposition went through. And I remember a press conference we had at Vermont and Wilshire Boulevard, Mr. Parks, and we had great support for the Korean American community, and it was just a few percentage points to put this forward. This is very good. It's a large space. 1988, having to get out of old Highland Park Station, they found this old photo facility, which did have some problems with it. And God bless all those. I think of Stacy Miyamura, who was an officer there, who, related, unrelated, got ill, and others did from that facility. Now we're going to get a new facility. We'll be able to figure it out. It's long overdue. It's amazing how that's over 20 years to try to achieve what was a temporary site. I am going to ask in a separate motion that the CAO look for an additional public safety bond. I do believe with the mobility of Los Angeles, we need to have smaller areas. Olympic is a classic example of a great move by the police department to smaller regional station, so to speak. And is there an additional station in the West Valley planned?
Not at this time, sir.
This is the last thing. But in your master plan, tell us about your master plan.
The master plan for additional stations would include the station that you've referenced as Northwest, which would be between
between Northeast and Hollywood.
Between Northeast. I'm sorry.
You can speak to the chair. It's easier.
Is it? The additional station would be between Hollywood and Northeast.
Right.
And then there are 2 additional stations that are planned for South Los Angeles.
Right. How about for West Los Angeles? That's awfully big, that area.
At this time, no, sir.
Yeah, but I think we maybe should look at that because mobility is so key. And if the areas are smaller, they can put their hands around them a little better and serve the public better. In addition to looking at possibly some of our 1950, early 50 stations like Station 35, 76, 60s, some of the other ones that are older stations that need to be modernized. Maybe there's something the CAO could do in the coming years. We'll ask you to look at that and report back. But Mr. Garcetti and Mr. Reyes and Mr. Weezer, this will be good improvement for the Northeast officers who serve our district so well. Thank you very much, Mr. Brennan. And Mr. Soto, thank you very much for your work. And when you see Ms. Cardenas, the CAO, Assistant CAO, tell her she's doing a good job.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. With that, we'll go ahead and take a vote on this item. If we can please prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved. Thank you both gentlemen very much. We'll Send that. We'll look forward to groundbreaking about a year from now. With that, if we can take up the next item called special, please.
Item number 6, called special by Councilmember Weezer.
Mr. Weezer, are we ready on number 6?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Unless the maker of the motion wants to speak first.
Okay. Ms. Perry.
I introduced this motion and was seconded by Mr. Parks to ask our chief legislative analyst to prepare a report to give us some models of other cities and other counties and how those bodies are represented by their attorney, their city attorney, their county council, and to explore the ramifications of separating the office between an elected position and an appointed position, the appointed position focusing on the more ministerial aspects of what a city attorney would do, the elected position, the prosecutorial arm of the city attorney. So basically, and just so that we're all clear, I am not talking about contracting out for legal services. That's not what I'm interested in. That is not the intention of this report. The intention of this report is to bring back several models for us to look at. And the reason that I have done this is out of expressions of concern and frustration as we have worked on some rather complex transactions over the last several years and tried to keep a separation between the policy-making, deliberative aspect of the city council versus the office of the city attorney. So this is an attempt to see how other people conduct business, what the ramifications are, whether it provides a more business opportunity climate for getting things done, whether it provides the opportunity for a deliberative legislative body to still be afforded the courtesy of being the policy-making body and getting a timely, objective, legal advice and representation and advocacy on behalf of its own legal representative. So again, this is just a study, an analysis, an overview to see if there are other models out there that work better than ours, and I hope that we're at least receptive enough to get that information before us and give it a look. But it is not at all about contracting out for legal services. That's not something that I intend, and I'm not at all interested in pursuing that. So that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weezer.
Thank you, Mr. President. When I read this, I just wanted to clarify that this is a report back and that we're just simply getting information. And as I did that this morning, I saw that the City Attorney's Office also has distributed some information about this. And so this may provide some answers already to what was presented. I'm just wondering, since the charter debates and the two charter commissions that we've had, they discussed this thoroughly, I would imagine that the CLA's office would probably just go back to those old debates and pick up some of the old information there. This information, I think, is readily available, and I just wanted to clarify that it is a report back, and it did talk about contracting out as well, so I wanted to clarify that that's not the intent or to do more of that, since I think our existing city attorney has been working to reverse from the contracting out that we've been doing to try to save more money, since we know if it could be done in-house, that saves us money. So the City Attorney's Office has passed out a letter. I'm wondering if anybody from the City Attorney's Office would like to add to that or not, or add anything to that. So I would just ask that this information is available. I'm not quite sure if this is going to provide any new research. If we want to discuss this, it seems to me that we do it thoroughly and with the intent of looking at the merits of doing this, and whether we agree or disagree with opinions is one thing, but I think we should think thoughtfully about the structure that we have, as have the last 100 years. This has been discussed over and over before we move into any direction on this matter.
Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just would like to just comment on the last 40-some years that I've been here. I think we've had an ongoing issue of whether it was a conflict of interest between the city attorney actually prosecuting people that they may have to then defend the city about that prosecution. And we've always been told that there's a separation. But I think what's happened over the last few years is that we saw recently during negotiation where actually a change of the office opinion came about because of a disagreement by the union that was within that department. We also know that currently there are a number of issues that's going on as it relates to the issues of our pension plans, in which one of the audits that was done recently advised Lacers they should have their own internal legal advice because their job is more more of a focal point on their membership and parochial as opposed to the general advice given by the city attorney. So there's a number of nuances that have occurred over time that I think need to be addressed, and I think that's why there's a need of study. And all we have to look for, just close, is go to the LA County and see county council and the district attorney. And they serve a county twice to 3 times the size of the city, and they also provide guidance on issues of legal issues and support and defending the county, while the DA has a very defined activity called prosecution. And so I think we need to look not only far and wide, but we need to look just what's going on in our own county to see the benefit of at least evaluating another system. And as we see more and more nuances of conflict, I don't think we can avoid them or ignore them and just believe that there's an internal door or curtain in a department that prevents these conflicts from occurring. And so I think it's well worth our time to study it, and upon that study we can make a decision as to what the future may bring.
Mr. Alarcon.
I think we should always, in every department, always be looking at new and better ways to do what we do. I'm concerned about this particular motion because I'm not exactly clear. There's no description of what exactly we are trying, what is our focus here, and what are we trying to get out of this. It's pretty vague. It just says looking at other cities and counties across the nation, including detailed review of the requirements related to both providing civil and criminal services. I think perhaps is there a concern? What is our concern? Is it fiduciary? Is it money? Is it the services we're rendering? Is it contracting out? Is it so I mean, if it's not contracting out, then do we want to exclude cities that contract out? We're not going to review those, or I would move that amendment. I would second. But I would have no problem in conducting a study. I am concerned about the city attorney's letter, which clearly believes that this is an effort to undermine the city attorney, and I believe there should be, before we request a report, there should be some kind of public vetting of this issue, because I'm not exactly clear what the motivation is. I haven't spoken to the city attorney. I haven't spoken to anybody in their office regarding this. Well, I'm sorry. I did mention something to Dion, but I won't say that on the record. I think I would be open to doing this if I had more clarification as to what exactly we're trying to accomplish here, and what, but I don't think a brief discussion on the council floor is the place to do that. So without that description of what it is we're trying to accomplish, I am not in favor of this motion.
Mr. Englander.
We about 8 years ago, working with Councilman Smith, we started and launched Renew LA, and we did a study on how to handle the city's trash. And so many people had said to us that, why are we going to do something different? We've got landfills. They're already sited. And there was a 1,000-year-old practice of digging a big hole in the ground and throwing our trash in it. And many have said that that's not environmentally sound and there's better practices. And then we looked around in the state of California and didn't really find anything different. Everybody was landfilling. And then again, everybody told us, well, why do anything different? So we wrote a 480-page plan that this council adopted that was signed by the mayors, the blueprint to eliminate our dependency on landfills. And the reason I bring that up is in 1889, the charter wrote that we should have one city attorney's office. And the questions that have been brought up is, well, we've always done it that way, so why change anything? Well, there's a lot of things we've always done. It doesn't always mean it's the best practice. It doesn't mean there's one better that's out there. But I think we should explore these. We should always look for better practices. We could look at cost-benefit analysis. We can also look at the issue that I've heard just as a staffer around this building for many years, that there's a feeling of a conflict of interest with the city attorney. And I don't mean this particular city attorney. I think he's doing a terrific job, but his predecessor and just the way that the office is structured, quite frankly. The fact that they write our ordinances is a conflict of interest, I think, many times in trying to get those ordinances out of that body, as we all know, and we've all been there. And I think a lot of people don't want to share that publicly, or the fact that we've got an elected city attorney, and it puts them in a very difficult position when they have to go after voters, when they have to go after those who are not following the law and maintaining their properties. We've had a difficult time over the years for enforcement with building and safety and bringing those cases to court oftentimes because of that conflict. And so while they don't suggest that that might be the issue, I think there are a lot of issues. We should just look at it. It's simply a study to look at best practices. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Perry is our next speaker.
Thanks, Mr. President. And I wanted to second Mr. Alarcon's motion about making sure that there was a language in there that we would not look at cities that contracted out for legal services, because that is not my interest. My interest is in efficiency. My interest is in looking at other models that might be more effective for a city of our size and magnitude. Maybe we can limit it to looking at other cities like Houston or Dallas or San Francisco, New York, cities that have similar or even greater populations than we do in counties. Whatever you want. Again, I'm not interested in looking at situations that entail contracting out. So let's not get sidetracked by that, because that's just a red herring. I don't even know where that's coming from. My interest, again, is looking at cities where the clarity or the lines are clearly drawn between the policy-making, deliberative, legislative body and the representation by the city attorney that is either elected or appointed, and how effective that is, how effective of a model that is, to take a look and see if our model is still as relevant today as it was when it was originally created. And that is the motivation for my request for this analysis by the chief legislative analyst.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Labange. Mr. Labange, did you want to?
I wasn't going to speak, but I will speak down.
Okay.
Could the League of Cities provide us any information? We're members of the League of Cities. Could anyone from the Southern California Association of Governments give us any information? Do we know that, Mr. Miller, or any of those groups on this? Well, on the motion here, which I support, to look at things. It's always good to look at things, but could the League of Cities give us any information, or California League of Cities, or the Southern California Association of Governments? Because I'm sure other municipalities do things a little differently.
Well, sure they can, but I don't think we need them to. We can certainly do the research to find out how other cities
just check with him. Check with Hassan.
Sure.
He's good. That's all. Thanks. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Mr. Huizar?
Thank you. Picking up on Mr. Alarcon's questions, I think if we look at the direction that we're giving the CLA, we're asking him and her or their staffs to prepare a report that reviews the models for providing legal services to cities in California and, to the extent relevant, other cities across the nation. So what models are out there? Then it says, including a detailed review of the requirements related to providing both civil and criminal services. That second part is not as clear. It says a detailed review of the requirements. I'm not quite sure there's any requirements as to when or how certain city attorney offices will have both civil and criminal services, but I think what that's asking if I'm correct, is a review of how does a city attorney's office providing both of those, if that does provide a better model or not. I think that's the way I'm taking it. Mr. Parks' issues that he raised are very good ones, but I'm not quite sure that's what we're directing the CLA to do so through this motion. The issue that arose with the potential or potential conflict of interest or perceived conflict or even actual conflict of interest between labor negotiators and the city, I'm not sure that's going to be captured through this motion. So I think there are some good questions to raise. I'm just not quite sure what we're looking for here. If we want to look at other models, like I said in my first comment, that information is readily available. I think that I'm not just quite clear what direction we're going with on this motion.
Ms. Perry.
Thank you very much again, Mr. President. And I think it's a good opportunity for us as a council. The direction that we're taking is to take a fresh look at other models and look at them, see if they apply to our situation or not, and whether or not we feel that we might be able to achieve some efficiencies and better operations. I mean, we do provide the oversight for the city as the deliberative legislative policy-making body, and this is an opportunity for us to take a fresh look and to have the CLA come and present it to us at the center table in a matter that is comprehensive, not a matter where we take a retrospective and look at things that have been done in the past on an ad hoc basis, but to allow the chief legislative analyst to come forward and to present it to us and to provide us with the opportunity to ask questions, to make comments, to debate, to disagree, or whatever we choose to do. But again, it's just an opportunity for us to practice what we're supposed to do, which is to be a policy-making, deliberative body, and I don't really see that there's a downside to that. And I thank Mr. Alarcon again for clarifying. It's been a morning of clarification. And I want to thank Mr. Alarcon again for making sure that we clarify that it's not about contracting out for services. So please, let's not get caught up in that red herring. Again, that's not the point of this. The point of this is to get a survey by our chief legislative analyst of other manners in which other cities conduct their city attorney business or other counties, and take a look at it and make some decisions about whether or not we may want to change the way that we conduct our business. And obviously not in a manner that is detrimental to the general fund, but might enhance the way that we are able to have a city attorney's office and how we interface and interact with the city attorney's office.
Thank you. Mr. Krikorian is our last speaker on the queue right now.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in support of this motion. I think it makes perfect sense for us to get a thorough report back. As Mr. Englander said, let's examine the best practices that other cities do. If this is the best model, if we currently have the best model, then we can retain it. If there's a way that we can improve the functionality of the city attorney's office and its relationship with the council and with others in the city, then let's at least have a look at that. The one suggestion I would have, Ms. Perry, which I think would be a friendly amendment, the motion calls for examining a review of the requirements related to providing both civil and criminal services. I would also suggest that the motion include a review of the capacity of the city attorney's office as legal advisor to the council and the city's departments, because that is a separate group of work that the city attorney does that also I think some cities might handle differently than we do, and I would be interested to know how that works. Thank you.
All righty. We have before us the motion. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
All right, that is approved. Mr. Krikorian?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask for reconsideration of number 26 for purposes of introducing an amending motion.
Okay, let's go ahead and open the roll on reconsideration of 26. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, 26 is reconsidered now. Did you want to add that now? Or
It needs to be distributed.
Okay, we have one other item on the desk, so we'll take that up and then we will come back to this. Item 34 was called special by Mr. Koretz. Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to flag this issue because this is one which I will be voting in opposition to the position that's presented of taking a position in opposition to the bill. What this measure would do is it would change how personnel commissions, civil service commissions are appointed in various municipalities, cities, counties, other agencies. The way it's currently done now, according to the Myers-Milius-Brown Act, the way these positions are appointed is not subscribed. It is at the education level, K through 12, where the appointments are made half by the agency and half by the employee unions. And the reason for this is to create a more balanced and fair commission. It's done at the K through 12 level with no difficulties. There have been problems in some localities in California. I wouldn't say that we have a lot of problems with this in Los Angeles, although I think this change would cause no harm to us. If we had problems of unfairness, you would probably see our employee unions represented and taking a position on this. They're not. I think this really doesn't make much of a difference one way or the other to Los Angeles, but I think there are problems and questions of unfairness in other places throughout the state. In the legislature, the only legislators that voted against this would be categorized, and probably happily so, as anti-labor legislators. So I think we should be aware of this piece of legislation. We should be aware that the AFL-CIO, AFSCME, SEIU, IBW, and others were strongly in support of it. And I would recommend that we not take a position on this issue.
Mr. Parks.
President, can we have the CLA come up, please? Colleagues, I think in looking at this legislation, and although it does not, on its face, does not exempt charter cities, I think there is a concern, and maybe, Jerry, you can talk about the issue of charter cities and what the potential impact is.
Our Civil Service Commission is approved by the voters. It's prescribed in the city charter. It's actually unclear whether this would be applicable. In order for state law to supersede a charter city's authority, it has to be of statewide interest. So I think that's something that city attorney is looking at. But, I mean, in the final analysis, it comes down to local control and for the city council and for the voters of the city to establish how the Civil Service Commission will be established. Okay.
Would it dilute the power of the mayor and the council if this was to be imposed upon us?
I suppose you could put it that way, yeah. I mean, they're currently appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the council. So, yeah, the council and the mayor would not have a voice in some of the appointments.
And currently, the mayor has the authority to appoint all members if, in the sense of being union members or union reps if he chose to.
Yes.
Okay, so the issue is that it would appear to me that rather than that a vote against this would be non-union, it would appear that the vote for this motion would be that you're protecting home rule.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, colleagues, and also we just got a word that the mayor certainly supports this motion because he believes that it is something that he does not believe the state of California should be imposing upon a charter city. If this legislation excluded charter cities, clearly defined, I don't think we'd have a problem with it, but at this time it doesn't. And so I would ask that we support the motion and ensure that we protect our home rule and the power of this council and the mayor now and in the future.
Mr. Englander.
I would ask that we look at that particular issue and ask the CLA to report back to this body if we did not vote today on this and decided to send it back to committee, that we get a report back from the CLA on what the true impact of charter cities would be, and so we can have that information, and all of you could actually look at what those impacts would be, and we could approve this with the amendment that we ask the state to amend and exclude charter cities, and if we made that part of it as well, I'd be happy with that.
Thank you. We've got Mr. Alarcon. Mr. Parks, do you want to?
I just want to comment on one thing. This is on the governor's desk at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Alarcon.
Council members, this appears to be an innocuous item, but it's a tricky one. Under the bill proposal, if it is passed, I think it's important for you to know that IBEW would essentially control half the members of the commission, which I believe would have to be defined as 3 out of 5, because you can't make it less than half, and the closest to half would be 3 of the 5 commission members. As the largest, I believe IBEW is the largest bargaining unit. Jerry, is that correct?
I would have to check.
Or the largest union or membership. Therefore, as I read the bill, it would have control of the 3 members. As the bill said, in cities with multiple bargaining units, the largest would designate the members of the commission. So, Mr. President, now on the other hand, I believe, I mean, if the bill simply said, labor representation, I have no problem with that. If the bill were amended to exclude charter cities, I would have no problem with that. But I'm sensitive to. It puts me in a very awkward position because I've been a longstanding champion of labor, but I don't want to vote against a bill that appears to be supportive of labor. Mr. President, I'm going to step out of the room because we do not have an abstention button. But if we did, I would certainly abstain.
All right. We have a couple rules that still have no words after the numbers, so Mr. O'Connell can look into that for future abstentions. Mr. Krikorian is our next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Englander earlier made a motion that had 2 components, one of which was to ask that the matter be sent to committee for review of the questions raised by suggested by Mr. Parks about the impact of this on charter cities and whether charter cities could constitutionally be impacted by this. And Mr. Alarcon has just raised additional questions about how this would affect us if we had a 5-member committee, how it would affect the fact that there's multiple bargaining units. So if the motion still stands to send this to committee for further analysis by the CLA, then I would second that motion.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
Mr. Krikorian, I think we were just advised that this is on the governor's desk, so it may not have the ability to go back and be studied. What we can go on is just on its face what the bill says. And I think the only protection that I can see is that we amend the bill and exclude charter cities, or we oppose the bill. And so I think that's the only way that we can protect what we know at the time.
Mr. Koretz.
I just point out my understanding of the bill is that it actually is a 50-50 provision, that half of the members would be selected by the governing body, half by employee organizations, and then the final member would be selected by the membership of those bodies. So it actually would be a 50-50 appointment. As far as whether it would apply to charter cities, that seems like a gray legal question. My suspicion is that, although I'm only an amateur attorney, and I'm sure real attorneys will not really know for sure, I think there's a reasonable chance that this won't apply to charter cities. But I suspect that might need further clarification.
Okay, can we just clarify? There's 2 motions you made, Mr. Englander. Could you just clarify them both for the record?
Was to send it back to committee to answer those questions. I think Mr. Parks brought up the issue that's sitting on the governor's desk. But we still have a lot of questions. If that could be rushed through in any way, I don't know how quickly the governor is going to be signing something, but I think it behooves this body to have as much information, particularly on taking a position that's so important and significant. And then the second one was that if we did not vote to do that, that at a minimum we would amend it to say that I'd ask for your support in the position of this if they would exclude charter cities. And that was the second amendment.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead. And is there a second for those?
I'll second both of them.
Okay. Mr. Krikorian seconds both of them. Mr. Parks?
The second motion.
The second, the first is to send back to committees for the answers.
The second motion was to ask the state to amend the bill to exclude charter cities.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So is there any objection to either of those? If there's, Mr. Kretz, there's?
Not an objection, but I'd point out I think that actually is a good idea, because even if we wind up opposing this measure and communicating that we would support it if that change were made, that could make its way into a veto message from the governor, who might veto it with that direction to come back with the legislation that would amend out charter cities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Parks?
Yeah, I just would object that we send it back to committee and address it, because I don't think we have the time to address it any other way than today.
So if there's no objection to the second, we'll add that amendment. We'll vote separately on the first one right now. Okay? So this vote is to send to committee. Please open the roll.
No.
Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
6 ayes, 5 noes.
To send to committee. All right, that it fails, and your vote would not have affected it one way or the other two. So, as amended, we now have to vote on it. So the amendment is to move forward to support, but with charter cities taken out. Okay. The first one, there was no objection, so that was amended onto it. The second one, to send to committee, was rejected. So we still have before us the motion as amended to support if the charter cities are taken out.
Excluded. Actually, he probably should come in.
I don't know, Mr. Al, this is now to approve rejecting. Sorry, to approve.
Including charter cities.
No, we already have that. To approve the motion, but also to add to that the charter cities be taken out, so that it wouldn't apply to charter cities, such as the City of Los Angeles. Yes, Mr. Parks?
I think there's a conflict there. Is that the motion says to reject the legislation. If we amend it and say we approve the legislation with Mr.
So the way we could resolve that is oppose unless it makes that change.
Oppose unless.
Okay.
Okay, that's good.
All right. Please open the roll on opposing unless. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 1 no.
Okay. That is approved as amended. Next item, please.
Item 26, called special by Councilman Krikorian.
Mr. Krikorian, item 26.
It's not on my desk yet. Thank you, Mr. President. I think the amending motion is being distributed or about to be distributed.
Okay, well, we can go to announcements and we'll see. It'll give us a few more. We can go through announcements and stuff like that. It'll give us a few more minutes.
Thank you.
If not, then we can always continue till tomorrow as well.
That'd be fine. Thank you.
All right. If we can go to forward to the any items that need to be posted and referred, and any excuses on the desk. If we can move all items that need to be posted and referred. Those are posted and referred. Any excuses? There's no excuses on the desk. Okay, that didn't kill a lot of time. But any announcements, colleagues?
Yeah. Mr. President, would this be the appropriate time for me to thank my colleagues? In fact, I'll retract that. Thank my friends, my dear friends and members of their staff. other members of the city family, people who work outside of this building. I just want to thank all of you for helping my family and definitely helping me get through the most difficult day of my life. So from the bottom of my heart, I'm very grateful. Thank you all. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Mr. Wesson. Our continuing good thoughts to you on that. 26A has been is being circulated. We'll go forthwith on the last one, number 34, without objection. And if there's an objection, I'll recognize Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Just very briefly, I introduced this resolution. Many of you might remember in November of 2009, there was a murder of a Granada Hills resident, 19-year-old Mike Yerpremian, took place in my district, right across the street from my district office. And you may remember this case because what initiated it was a text message that this teenager sent to his girlfriend that someone else perceived to be insulting. And that set into process a series of events that led to this young man being brutally murdered at the corner of Victory and Laurel Canyon. For 18 months, the Los Angeles Police Department tracked the suspect in this crime and eventually identified him and found him in hiding in Puerto Rico. He was arrested on a no-bail warrant, and when he was brought before the judge in Puerto Rico, inexplicably, this Puerto Rican judge released him on a $50,000 bond, a murder suspect who had fled the country and was in Puerto Rico. It was really an outrage that infuriated the LAPD, who spent 18 months and expended considerable taxpayer dollars to try to identify this suspect. He was released on a $50,000 bond. It was an outrage. Fortunately, because of the great work of the Los Angeles Police Department, I'm pleased to say that this suspect has now been brought to justice. He did surrender, and he's now in the custody of our judicial system, and the trial will proceed. He'll be charged and the trial will proceed. But this resolution continues to call for an investigation of the circumstances under which this murder suspect on a no-bail warrant was released on a $50,000 bond. Congressman Buck McKeon has already taken up my call to investigate the matter and submitted it to the Attorney General of the United States. This resolution simply calls for support of investigation of those circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Krikorian. As amended, let's go ahead, accept 26A, and open the roll on 26. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
That's approved. We'll send that forthwith as well without objection. Any other announcements, colleagues? Mr. Labange and then Mr. Parks.
I'd like to make two community announcements. One, the zoning administrator hearing for the Fresh and Easy store on 52nd and Crenshaw is going to be held tonight at 4:30 at the Constituent Center at 8475 South Vermont. For those, and they're looking for a conditional use permit for beer and wine sales. The other one that's a very important community meeting is that MTA is holding a community update regarding the Crenshaw LAX Transit Corridor light rail system, and it will be held tonight at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Faithful Central Bible Church at 400 West Florence in Inglewood.
Mr. Labange.
Thank you. I think there was two significant events this last few days. One, yesterday, Mr. Garcetti, thank you. Mr. Parks, big thank you. Ms. Perry, thank you. The whole City Council, thank you for Prop L, which passed. The libraries are now open on Monday. It effectively was a positive change by the people of Los Angeles with the support. And again, on Sunday, the completion of the San Diego Freeway project. I was very much monitoring it from my role as Vice Chair of Transportation Committee, impacts on other parts of the city, including the 110 corridor as well as the 101 corridor, and it worked. And I said, Mr. Garcetti, if I was allowed to speak, but I wasn't that day, I said that project on the San Diego Freeway didn't get done because they had a tea party. It got done because we had a team party focused on making a difference in opening that freeway in the right time. As it was. And it was an interesting day the whole weekend. I wonder what sociologists and others will say in the weeks ahead as they define what it done. But it was a work effort by the MTA, by our Department of Transportation, by Caltrans, CHP, LAPD, LADOT, traffic officers, the community, everybody trying to make it work and witness it. And I just wanted to speak out to say that's two good days that we work. Government works, but it gets together and reaches out. So I wanted to thank everybody. It wasn't a tea party. It was a team party.
Mr. Rosendahl, announcements.
Mr. President, just to back up what Mr. Labange said, when I was driving on Centinela, they had blocked off the entranceway to the 10 freeway, which was a mistake. Somebody just got carried away. I called Chief Albanese, Kurt, who was up in a chopper, and I said, mistake there. 20 minutes later, he called me back, and it was removed. The cooperation among every aspect of government, state, local, county, and the coordination among all the principals was breathtaking to see. When they were here in front of us in council, I asked for a meeting we held in the Skirball, and we brought the community groups from both sides of the 405, Mr. Koretz's area and my area, and a lot of suggestions came up, a lot of ideas were worked on. So it was a real cooperative effort with the communities, as well as with the entire group of various people. We've seen both Zev Yaroslavsky and Antonio getting up there and doing their shtick, but the people I really want to thank are the media for getting the word out, and especially the citizens for listening, taking a deep breath, and enjoying the weekend without having to get in a car and realizing life goes on in a very positive way without the car. So it was a great experience for our city. I think a lesson learned that I liked the most was the hospitals who had put up their workers in case of an issue, and that sets us up, God forbid, we have a major disaster like an earthquake or something else, that this was a dry run of how all the agencies can work together, the emergency preparedness and the central command. It was a terrific example. Have people focus and stay focused and work together, you can actually make something happen. So it was a good moment for all of us in this region.
As adjourning motion, right? If I can ask everybody, please rise in council chambers for adjourning motions. Ms. Perry, and then we'll come over to Mr. Weezer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the sad task of adjourning in memory of a beloved activist, Lillian Harkless Mobley, who was known throughout this country for her efforts to advocate on behalf of those who were disadvantaged. Mrs. Mobley was a native of Macon, Georgia. She and her husband, James Otis Mobley, moved to South Los Angeles in 1951. Her activism started when her children began school with the PTA, the Girl Scouts, and the Campfire Girls. She became much more involved in the community in 1967 when she engaged in a neighborhood adult participation project, an anti-poverty program designed to provide training and employment opportunities for adults in poor neighborhoods. As a member of the project, she was a community worker and a health and education specialist, and eventually became the director of the center. She was elected to be a delegate to the National Democratic Convention in 1980, and the following year, she was a delegate to the State Conference on Aging. In 1982, she started the South Central Multipurpose Center, where she and her staff provided an array of services for young people and seniors and referrals to county agencies. In 1992, when the LA riots erupted, the Red Cross only ventured as far south as Manual Arts High School. In response, Mrs. Mobley and her group, Mothers in Action, got to work, set up tents, and provided 3 meals a day, housing, and health services to a community that was in chaos. Martin Luther King Hospital and Charles Drew University Medical School, monuments which stand today, are a testament to the leadership and the courage of Mrs. Mobley. Mrs. Mobley launched Grandma's Hands Los Angeles. It was a birthing project, a part of a larger national organization to target African American maternal and child health issues that aimed to improve birth outcomes in the African American community by helping women during pregnancy and afterwards. She was also known for her advocacy and her educational outreach on the fight against diabetes, both type 1 and type 2. And a lot of what I did on fast food is as a direct result of knowing her and having her talk to me over the years about pushing things away that kill communities. And she was an enormous influence. One of the most wonderful moments that I ever witnessed in her life, and probably mine, was the night that President Obama was elected, and she was sitting in her wheelchair in the hallway of the Los Angeles Sentinel with tears streaming down her face because she said, "I never thought that I would live long enough to see this happen," and thank goodness that she did. She leaves behind a legacy of work. A legacy of work with the Brotherhood Crusade, Mothers in Action, the Lillian Mobley South Central Multipurpose Senior Citizens Center, Southwest College, Watts Labor Community Action Committee, and the Watts Learning Center, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and so much more. And I know that when the celebration of her life is scheduled, that we will be able to talk and remember her in a very joyful way. But her leadership will be missed, and her legacy lives on through the work that she left for us to continue.
Thank you. Mr. Huizar. Yeah, sure, we'll put all members. Mr. Huizar.
Great. Thank you, Mr. President. And it's with great sadness that I announce the passing of Father Ralph Joseph Murphy. He was the principal of Salesian High School, my alma mater, for 2 terms. He was not only an enduring figure at Salesian High School, but also a great asset to all the community of the East Side for at-risk youth. As you know, the Salesians dedicate their lives to helping young people, and his work on the East Side had spanned over 3 decades. Father Murphy joined the Salesian faculty as its second vice principal in the fall of 1958 to 1962. He is one of the pioneers helping to formulate the character of a young student body, still in the process of shaping its identity. As a teacher, his specialty was English literature, but he also coordinated the efforts of the Student Council, the Honor Society, and the Yearbook. He did this with great positive energy and a real zest for life. He was principal of Salesian High School from 1963 to 69, 1970 to 71, and again from 1980 to 84. After his second term as principal, he served 8 years as the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club in City Terrace. With his work on behalf of the Boys and Girls Club, Father Murphy became a very visible community leader. He developed a nonprofit to promote the works of the club and support of at-risk youth. Today, there is a wide support for the club due to the early work of Father Murphy. Father Murphy attended St. John Bosco in Bellflower and was part of their first graduating class. He later returned to the Don Bosco campus to be ordained as a priest in the school chapel with his family and friends in attendance. Father Murphy passed away on Thursday, July 14, 2011, and is survived by his sister Elizabeth. He will be missed greatly by all whose life he touched, and he certainly touched mine when I was a freshman and sophomore at the high school. And as I was reading this, I was remembering a funny story of when I went up to Cal Berkeley, and the Salesians have a home right next to the UC campus, and they always invite all the students who are admitted to UC Berkeley, both from the Richmond High School and the high school here in Boyle Heights. But I recall that he offered me a beer, and it was awkward for me as a young boy to take a beer from a priest, where you try to hide that stuff from, you tell them you don't drink and all that stuff. But the Salesians have done a lot to save many young boys, and Father Murphy really lived in the spirit of St. John Bosco, whose order started at Italy many, many years ago. Even today, there's many professionals who go back to Salesian High School to honor Father Murphy for all he has done. I also recall there were also some gang members that I had known from junior high school, and they talked about how much he meant to them. He would visit them on occasion. And that's the type of person he was. He went out of his way to really help out many, many young people in the East Side. He's in a better place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Huizar. We're very sorry to hear. Any other adjourning motions, colleagues? If not, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll? We'll next be in session tomorrow. That's Wednesday, July 20th, 2011. This meeting of the Los Angeles City Council is adjourned. Have a good day, Los Angeles.